Hello, everyone. We are live on Facebook. Thanks for joining us. We are also on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. It's good to have you here. I see Charlotte. Hopefully you're still watching. Good to see you. Hi, Charlotte. Kim's watching. Hi, Kim. How you doing? Sammy, say hi, Kim.
Hi.
We have Wiki. We have Ruth. Stu and Ruth in Chicago watching. I wonder who that's for. Thank you for tuning in. Randy Roller, Charlie Cross from Springfield as well. Hello, part of fans. I think you're here for, yes, Quinn Kelsey, which thank you for tuning in and watching. We are excited to be here. We got a great evening prepared for you. Hi, Justin Welsh, the singing postman is here. Big thank you to Yukon. And Ontario, I should know if there's a Yukon, Ontario. I don't. But the Yukon Arts Center in Yukon, all the way on the West Coast, is sponsoring these series, and we're excited for them, and we thank you for that. We are paying our artists, and we're trying to get as much into their pockets as we can, and support like that is doing it. It was on May 1st, I believe, that we began our first virtual event right here. Oh, hi, Leslie. Leslie said, hi, Sammy. And since then, we have not looked back. It's been exciting to figure out new things. We've decided to make this whole series free, to bring some music to you guys during this time that seems to just keep going and going and going. And so we are rolling with that as well. Consider supporting Against the Grain if that is cool for you. And you can find all of our information online, either at our website or on Facebook. Whatever means you can do that. But I know that you're not here necessarily for me or the jumping around Sammy, but we are here for the one and the only David Eliakis. Can I bring you in, David? Hey.
Hey, Joel. How's it going? Hey, Sammy.
Hi.
We're doing all right. How are you doing, David?
Good. I mean, it's back to being crazy hot again, which I love. I wait all year long for this weather, so I know a lot of you are complaining about the humidity, but to all of you, I say shut it, because I have to live frozen for like 3/4 of the year. I'm loving this.
Perfect. Well, I'll hand it over to you. I just want to say hi to Myra, all the way from the nation's capital as well. This was kind of cool about this is we get people tuning in outside of those who can make it to the old days of the old spaghetti factory. So it's it's a unique experience.
For sure.
I'll take over.
Oh,
See ya.
I wonder. Okay, great. Thanks, Joel. See ya. Hey, everybody. As Joel said, my name is David Eliakis, and I am your host for tonight's Opera Pub. Again, thanks to the Yukon Arts Center for sponsoring the Opera Pub. Tonight, we are coming to you live from Vaughan, Ontario, which is home of Canada's largest major theme park, Canada's Wonderland. I was actually at Canada's Wonderland the first year that it opened, so that probably ages me, but not as much as what I'm about to say next. When we were trying to come up with a theme for tonight, I originally had said, why don't we do something like Three's Company, because we actually have 3 artists tonight. And what you don't know at ATG is that most of our team that works there are a little bit younger than me or a lot younger than me. And so when I said Three's Company based on the TV show, most of them didn't actually get the reference because they haven't even seen the show, which to me is a blasphemy. So fans out there that are watching right now on Facebook, anyone out there like Three's Company? Do you remember Three's Company? Am I the only one that watched Three's Company? Anyways, for those reasons, we're not going with the Three's Company theme, and instead we're going with Vaughan-d Memories. Our 3 artists tonight are mezzo-soprano Deanna Pauletto, who has had performances in Germany, France, Canada, and the US, including a performance at Carnegie Hall in New York City. She's a graduate of York University and the Giuseppe Verdi Conservatory in Milan. She also was mentored by the illustrious American mezzo Marilyn Horne at the Music Academy of the West in Santa Barbara. Her partner, American baritone Quinn Kelsey, was originally born in Honolulu, Hawaii. His debut at the Metropolitan Opera happened in 2008 in Jean's Level M. And since then, he's done a number of Verdi roles there, as well as Donizetti and Humperdinck's Hansel and Gretel. He's also graced the stages of the Royal Opera House in London, Paris Opera, Opera Bastille, Zurich, Rome, Berlin, San Francisco, and here in Toronto at the Canadian Opera Company. Their pianist for tonight is my good friend and colleague, Andrea Grant. Andrea is part of the music staff at the U of T Opera School, which is where we've known each other for many years. She's also head of music staff at the Wexford Festival Opera, which is in Ireland, and she's also part of the Opera Theatre of St. Louis in Missouri. Andrea is the kind of pianist that I always send singers to when they bring me something that I don't know, because I assume Andrea has played all of the operas. And I know there's a lot out there, but I'm pretty sure she's played all of them. But aside from opera, she's also played a number of recitals across the country and even as far as Hong Kong. Tonight's rec that we're going to hear looks at a bunch of operatic arias and duets from some of the Italian masters. So Verdi, Rossini, and Mozart as well. We're also going to hear some Rodgers and Hammerstein and a couple more surprises at the end as well. So let's get started. The first aria that we're going to hear comes from Rossini's L'Italiana in Algeri. And this is essentially an aria of how an Italian woman deals with a bunch of stupid men. In this aria, Isabella has traveled to Algeria to find her lover Lindoro. Her ship has been shipwrecked there, and the Algerian pirates are planning on capturing her to become part of their harem. Now, anyone else might see this kind of situation as a dangerous situation, but she knows that these pirates are only men, and thus will be absolutely no challenge for her to outwit. This is Cruda Sorte from Rossini's L'Italiana in Algeri.
Cruda sorte, amor tiranno, questo il premio di mia fe. Non terror, terror, mi affanno, pari a quel ch'io provo in me. Per te solo, oh mio Lindoro, io mi trovo in tal periglio. Dai chi spero, oddio consiglio, oddio consiglio, chi conforto mi darà. Dai chi spero, oddio consiglio, chi conforto mi darà. Dai chi spero, oddio consiglio, chi conforte conforte mi darà. Capace vuol disinvoltura, non più smania né paura, di coraggio tempo adesso, or chi sono si vedrà, or chi sono si vedrà. Già sol che pratica qual sia l'effetto d'un sguardo languido, d'un sospirito. Sodomar gli uomini come si fa? Sì, 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 sodoma gli uomini come si fa? Sì, sodoma gli uomini come si fa? Sia in dolci o ruvidi, sia in flemma o fuoco, son tutti simili a preso a poco. Sia in flemma o fuoco, son tutti simili a preso a poco. Tutti la chiedono, tutti la bramano, tutti la chiedono, tutti la bramano. Da vaga femmina felicità, sì, 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 da vaga femmina felicità, sì, da vaga femmina felicità. Tutti la bramano, tutti la chiedono, da vaga femmina felicità. Tutti la bramano, tutti la chiedono, da vaga femmina felicità. Da vaga femmina felicità, da vaga femmina felicità, felicità, felicità.
Great. Now that's how you open an opera pub. Thank you, Deanna. The opera Rigoletto comes from Giuseppe Verdi's middle period, and this is when three of his most popular operas were composed: Il Trovatore, Rigoletto, and La Traviata. The character Rigoletto is the hunchbacked court jester to the Duke. And prior to the scene that you're about to hear, Rigoletto was mocking the Count, who then cursed him. And on his way home, Rigoletto continued to ponder this curse. He took it really seriously. On his way home, he's approached by an assassin who offers his services. And Rigoletto realizes that he's actually not that different from the assassin, who uses a knife to kill, while Rigoletto uses his sharp tongue to stab his victims. This is Pari Siamo from Verdi's Rigoletto.
Siamo, io ho la lingua, e gli hai la pugnale, l'uomo salia che ride, e quel che spegne. Qual vecchia malediva-mi. O uomini, o natura, vil scellerato, mi faceste voi. O rabbia, esser difforme, esser buffone, non dover, non poter altro che ridere. Il retaggio d'ogni uomo è tolto, il pianto. Questo padrone mio, giocando, si possente, bello, sonnecchiando mi dice: fa chi ride, buffone, forzarmi deggio e farlo. Oh, dannazione! Odio a voi, cortigiani schernitori, quando in mordervi ho gioia, se iniquo son, per cagion vostra e solo. Mai d'altr'uomo qui mi cangio, quel vecchio malediva-mi. Dal pensiero, perché conturba la mente mia, mi coglierà sventura. Anna e follia.
Well, no wonder the world is hiring you to sing Verdi, Quinn. Amazing. Beautiful. The next piece that we're going to hear comes from Mozart's Don Giovanni. And at the last Opera Pub, if you were there, we spoke briefly about this seducer, this world-famous seducer, Don Giovanni. And in this particular duet, here he is doing what he does best in one of the most famous duets, I think, in opera. He's just met the young Zerlina, who, although she's about to be married that day, he still finds the time to woo her away from her soon-to-be husband and attempts to seduce this young, naive bride-to-be. This is La ci darem da mano from Mozart's Don Giovanni.
Quel casinetto è mio, soli saremo, e la gioiella mia ci sposeremo. La ci darem la mano, la mi dirai di sì. Vedi non è lontano, partiam ben mio da qui.
Vorrei e non vorrei, mi trema un poco il cor, felice versarei, ma può volarmi ancor, può volarmi ancor.
Vieni mio bel diletto,
E fa pietà, masetto,
io canterò tua sorte.
adesso non so più forte, non son più forte, non son più forte.
Vieni, vieni, la ci darem la mano.
Vorrei e non vorrei,
La mi dirai di sì.
mi trema un poco il cor.
Partiam ben mio da qui.
Può volarmi ancor.
Vieni mio bel
E fa
diletto,
pietà, masetto,
io canterò tua sorte.
non son più forte, non son più forte, non son più forte.
Andiam, andiam. Andiam, andiam, mio bene, a risorare le pene d'un innocente amor. Andiam, andiam, mio bene, a ristorare le pene d'un innocente amor. Andiam, andiam, mio bene, andiam, le pene a risorare d'un innocente amor.
Beautiful. This is the part of the evening where we get to know our artists a little bit more in depth. So let's say hello to Quinn, Deanna, and Andrea. Hey, everybody.
Hi, David.
How's everybody doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. Very good. Thank you. A little hot. I chose to not use the air conditioning tonight, thinking it's breezy enough, and I'm starting to regret it a little bit. So if you get blinded by the amount of light bouncing off my forehead, just let me know and I'll take care of that by the next interview.
Way more fun than you do, so don't worry about it.
Great, thanks. All right, let's get started with this interview. Quinn, I'm going to start with you because we actually just met. So you were born in Hawaii. you moved to Chicago, and then you ended up in the suburbs of Toronto. What brought you from Hawaii to Toronto? Because I'm sure it's very difficult for all of us Northerners to understand why someone would leave Hawaii to come to a place like Toronto.
Yeah, completely got lost, let me tell you.
Messed up.
Great.
Grew up in a music family. Decided, started singing in opera chorus in Hawaii in 1991, and knew that opera was going to be what I wanted in my life early on in college. But knew nothing of music schools, and it's crazy how it worked out that staying home in Hawaii, because I figured I should just register for school at the university, and then if something better came along, then I could just transfer wherever that was, but then I wouldn't have wasted any time. I wouldn't have to start it over, my degree. And made so many connections for all the things that happened to me in Hawaii between the church job that I got and the beginning of the studio program that the Hawaii Opera Theater began right while I was in college. So timing was so perfect. And eventually made my way to Chautauqua, New York for the summer program there, with a bunch of the folks from ABA, Manhattan School, and Juilliard, and then to the Maryland program in San Francisco, and then eventually to an audition for the Young Artist program in Chicago. And the only downside for Hawaii is just that there's barely enough classical music for those who do find a way to make classical music / opera their livelihoods in Hawaii. And so I had to leave. And 17 years ago, moved to Chicago to be a young artist with what is now the Ryan Opera Center in Chicago. I was a member there for 3 years, and then my girlfriend at the time urged me to buy a place in Chicago because she could tell that I could afford it. And so I've kept a place in Chicago for the last 16 years. And then 5 years ago, well, I came to Toronto in the fall of 2011 for Rigoletto. And then they had me back for Don Quixote in the spring of 2014. And then the last production was a production of La Traviata that began in Chicago and had already been slated for Toronto and Houston as well. So fall of 2015 was the last time I was here, and it turns out that somebody's voice teacher went to La Traviata, and then at the next voice lesson asked her student, "Oh, have you been to La Traviata?" And the student says, "Nah, I'm just kind of busy and wasn't gonna plan to go." And she says, 2 words, Quinn Kelsey. And she tells this part of the story way better than me. But
No, you're doing just fine.
So and she'd heard me. Apparently, she heard me sing in the Rigoletto, and then she'd heard me in New York in a production of Traviata in 2014. And then her voice teacher told her about La Traviata here. And just on a whim, she found me on social media, of course, and clicked the friend request button, which is something that she or I would never do for someone we don't know. And the only problem was by the time she reached out to me, it was like the last few days I was in Toronto, and my schedule was really tight, so I wasn't going to have any time to sit down and relax because I'm making plans to pack up, and I drove my car from Chicago, so I gotta make all my plans to get out of town because I only had so much time to get back to Chicago before I had to take off again and go to my next job. And so here she is sending me this really nice message. You don't know me. I'm sorry. I friend requested you. I'm a big fan. Da 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 da. And it wasn't until weeks later that I was able to just sit down and go, oh yeah, that girl from Canada wrote me. I should probably write her back and say, no, I don't think you're nuts. I just didn't have any time because how crazy my schedule was, and we started from there. And so
I'm going to assume that girl that sent you that text is the one that's sitting next to you, clutching onto you right now.
Yes.
Got it.
And so we 4 years ago, and now here we are.
Amazing. Beautiful. So you're well known for singing a lot of Verdi, and Deanna, you studied at the Verdi Conservatory in Milan.
Yes, I
So I'm going to ask all three of you, favorite Verdi opera?
did.
Andrea?
I have to go first. I might say, gosh, it's hard to choose a favorite child. But I mean, Don Carlo has like the tunes, right? That's a good one.
Oh God, that's hard. I love all of them, but I think I probably Aida.
What?
What?
Not Traviata.
Okay, I love Traviata too.
I
love Traviata.
She loves
Yeah.
Traviata.
It's a great. I've seen you sing it so many times that it's just become like I know every aria and every part of that opera. So it's hard. They're all so good.
It's true. It's so true.
Yeah,
My
I mean
problem is-
Traviata. How can you?
Yeah.
Well, no, of course. Well, see, but my problem is because of all the Verdi I've done, and for all the time you have to put into learning it and knowing it, and then you're sitting in rehearsals and and you're in performances, and you can't help but get to know all aspects of it. So even when you're backstage or waiting to come in, you do it, and you do those productions enough, and you can't help but it's well, at least for me, it sticks in my head, and so
yeah.
It's Verdi has become such a foundation for my work that I take responsibility for it. I take pride in it. I feel extreme value in knowing this music, and so it's such a hard call. I guess I would say, so before Verdi became a thing for me, Bohème was my favorite because I knew it the most. So in that vein, I would say Rigoletto, just because it's the opera that I know the most. It's the one that I feel the most comfortable in because I've had to do so much work in it. It's the one that I can pull out of my pocket the easiest, and you can put me in any setting, and I'll make it fit.
For sure. I mean, it's kind of an impossible question to ask something like that, because if you're a Verdi fan, I mean, you love him through and through. His operas, they're so full of melody. It never runs out. I remember doing a Traviata, and it's just like, every time a scene would finish, I would think like, oh, that was my favorite scene. And you turn the page and you're like, oh no, this is my favorite scene. And it's just like every page turn, it's like, there's just so much amazing music. He doesn't run out of music. So not an easy question, I know. But good answers. I like what you said. You mentioned, or I mentioned, and you mentioned Chicago earlier. And we're going to try something new tonight. We're going to try a new little segment that we came up with called why David loves Chicago. And so I'm going to explain to you all the reasons, or at least a couple reasons, why I love Chicago. Very impressive. Our budget has really upped itself, you can tell. Okay, so reason number one that I love Chicago is the planning and architecture of this city. First of all, the architecture is out of this world. If you like architecture, or if you don't even know anything about architecture, just go to Chicago and have a look around because it's phenomenal. The buildings there are so gorgeous. But it's not just the architecture, but the way the city has been planned, the way they use the waterfront and not just covered up with a bunch of condos everywhere. It's a beautiful walking city. If you've never been, I'm telling you, you got to go, just not for New Year's, which we did one year because it was bloody freezing. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Okay, reason number two, I love Chicago, the people. There is something about Chicago people that they just have this incredible energy about them. They're so outgoing. They're so friendly. They're not shy. And it's just, I don't know, there's a very special energy about Chicagoans. That's not a real word, is it? No. About anyone from Chicago. If you go, you'll know what I'm talking about. There's just such a warm, welcoming, excited feeling that you get from people in Chicago. Okay, reason number three, I love Chicago. Large portions when you go out to eat. I'm telling you, you will never leave a restaurant hungry when you eat in Chicago. And that is my kind of eating. I am not interested in these tiny portions where I have to order 7 of the same dishes just so I can feel sort of full. Never going to happen in Chicago. Thank you, Chicago. Okay, reason number 4, I love Chicago. The Billy Goat Tavern. If you've never been, you have to go and experience this place. As you can see from the picture, it kind of looks like it's in the basement cafeteria of a hockey arena, and that's sort of what it feels like when you go there. There's a very grumpy Greek man behind the counter, you can see him there, and he's the one who prepares your burgers for you. So I went with my partner, and you have to sort of line up with a tray at the beginning of the counter, and you just sort of file around this counter, and when you get to the grumpy Greek man, you place your order. And so I said, we'll have 2 single burgers. And he looked at me and my partner and said, no, too skinny. You're both having double cheeseburgers. And we were like, okay, sure, fine, no problem. So he made us our double cheeseburgers and we kept shimmying around the counter. And at the very end of the counter, you can't see her, but I'm pretty sure it's his daughter sitting at the cash register. And she doesn't look very happy because I'm pretty sure she was born at that cash register and has never been allowed to leave. There is a sign at the cash register that says, no French fries, just chips. And so when we got to the cash, she said, do you want chips? And I said, no, considering your father forced us into getting double cheeseburgers, I think we're fine without the chips. And her response was, why don't you want chips? And I kind of felt threatened by this, but thought we'll just go along with it for now because we're in Chicago and she seems pretty angry. So yeah, if you've never been to the Billy Goat Tavern, go and have a burger there. Although they look like someone sat on them, I guarantee that they are the most delicious burgers you will ever eat. And those are the 4 reasons why David loves Chicago.
Awesome.
All right.
Well done.
Speaking of Chicago, Quinn. Oh, for me? Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Enough. Late, but pretty good. We'll get that right next time we do this. Quinn, Chicago is known probably more for its deep dish pizza than anything else, right?
Here it comes.
Yeah, but we're not going to talk about deep dish pizza. There's actually a brunch spot in Greektown in Chicago called, I think, Meli, if I'm not mistaken. And it is by far the greatest brunch I've ever had in my life. Again, huge portions. The only brunch I've ever had to take away with me because I couldn't finish it. My question to the three of you is, what is your favorite brunch location, either here or elsewhere?
That's hard. I like food, period. So, well,
Good.
there was, I do remember one in the West Loop. For those of you who don't know Chicago, the Loop is the downtown area immediately south of the river. North of the river is all the hotels and shopping, and south of the river is all the theaters and office buildings. So, and it's called the Loop generally because of how the trains go in a loop around that area. So the West Loop is basically straight west of the Opera House, and it's all. It used to be all industrial. Now it's fancy lofts and cool restaurants and bars and things. And there's a place out on that side called Wishbone. Kind of omelette-y kind of a thing, but just really fun light food too, and in this kind of happening up and coming neighborhood. So that was
Cool.
probably the best brunch experience that I've had in Chicago.
All right.
But then again, Chicago is all food, so
Yes,
I mean,
it is.
yeah.
Deanna, favorite brunch?
Toronto or Chicago or both or
Wherever. I'm
I
keeping a list.
God.
She did go to tea at the Ritz in London.
Oh gosh, that was very spectacular. Oh, that was wonderful. There's a great place in Toronto. Oh God, I wish I could remember. Emma, what was that place? Emily's?
Oh,
It's really good.
Oh, the bacon, the bacon maple donuts.
Oh,
it's on St. Clair near.
It's pretty popular, and I went and I was like,
Emma's Country
Kitchen.
Emma's Country
Oh.
Kitchen or Emma's.
Yeah,
I think I saw a little bit about that on a TV show that goes around and rates different restaurants. So
make like their homemade donuts and the waffles, all the things you really shouldn't have
French
are
toast.
so delicious.
Yep.
We
Perfect.
loved it. Yeah.
Andrea?
I haven't been there in a while, but I used to live up until last year around Roncesvalles area, and at the end of my street there was a little cafe called Mixed, and they would have a lineup every weekend for brunch. They've been doing like locally sourced stuff for years and years, and it's always very original and creative, and that is a great brunch place. So.
I mean, I think we're so lucky to have so many great brunch places in Toronto, and I'm sure Chicago is the same. Because in some of my travels, like I'm amazed when there's nowhere to go for brunch. It's just like, what do people do on Sunday morning for food? I mean, cooking at home, fine, but when you're traveling, you want a good brunch.
Well, and if there's
Great.
a line, something's happening.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And it seems that the best brunch places in the city are always the smallest places as well. So there's always a lineup regardless.
Happens
Great.
When I've heard of great places, and I'm like, I'm so excited, and I get there, and I'm like, there are 4,000 people in that line.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's nothing worse than waiting for food when you're hungry. I am not a happy camper when I have to wait for food. Anyways, we're going to wrap up this first bit of interviews right now and get to some more videos. You guys stick around, and I'll see you in a couple of minutes, okay?
Sounds good.
Cool, thanks. All right, so let's get back to some music. We're going to look at some Rodgers and Hammerstein for this next little group of songs here. Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein are the composer-lyricist duo who defined an era of American Broadway musicals with huge hits such as Oklahoma, Carousel, South Pacific, The King and I, and The Sound of Music. South Pacific, which is what we're about to hear, premiered in 1949 on Broadway and was an immediate hit with a run of almost 2,000 performances. This song is considered the single biggest hit to come out of any Rodgers and Hammerstein show. The original Broadway production starred the Italian operatic bass Ezio Pinza, and he won a Tony Award for Best Actor in this role in 1950. And the interesting thing about this is that it attracted many non-opera audiences to the opera world, which coincidentally is exactly what ATG is always trying to do. The musical won 10 Tony Awards, as well as a Pulitzer Prize Award for drama, and the original cast recording was a best-selling record of its time. This is Some Enchanted Evening from Rodgers and Hammerstein's South Pacific.
Some enchanted evening, you may see a stranger. You may see a stranger across a crowded room, and somehow you know even then, that somewhere you'll see her again and again. Some enchanted evening, someone may be laughing. You may hear her laughing across a crowded room, and night after night, as strange as it seems, the sound of your laughter will sing in your dreams. Who can explain it? Who can tell you why? Fools give you reason, wise men never try. Oh, some enchanted evening, when you find your true love, when you feel her call you across a crowded room, then fly to the side and make her your own. For all through your life you will dream all alone. Once you have found her, never let her go. Once you have found her, never let her go.
It's no wonder Rodgers and Hammerstein were such a hit. Like Verdi, it's just one amazing tune after another. Speaking of, The King and I is Rodgers and Hammerstein's fifth musical, and like the others, was another huge hit. The plot revolves around Anna, a British school teacher, and the king, who has hired her. Their relationship is confrontational at best, but it's driven by their hidden love for each other. This is Something Wonderful from Rodgers and Hammerstein's The King and I.
This is a man who thinks with his heart. His heart is not always wise. This is a man who stumbles and falls, but this is a man who tries. This is a man you'll forgive and forgive, and help and protect as long as you live. and tell him when he's strong, he is wonderful. He may not need your love, and so he'll get your love. A man who needs your love can be wonderful.
It seems like Deanna keeps choosing roles of women who have to deal with difficult men. And I'm hoping that this isn't sort of a life analogy for her, but we'll find that out in the second interview in just a second. Carousel is Rodgers and Hammerstein's second musical, and the story revolves around a carny by the name of Billy Bigelow and his romance with the mill worker Julie Jordan, and all his sort of futile attempts to try and provide for their unborn child. Richard Rodgers actually claimed that Carousel was his favorite of all of their musicals. And you probably know the song You'll Never Walk Alone, which comes from Carousel. But right now, we're lucky enough to actually hear the beautiful duet, If I Loved You, from Carousel.
If I loved you, time and again I would try to say all I'd want you to know.
If I loved you, words would come in an easy way. Round in circles I'd go.
Longing to tell you, but afraid and shy.
I'd let my golden chances pass me by.
Soon you'll leave me, off you would go in the midst of day. Never, never to know I love you. If I loved you, longing to tell you, but afraid and shy.
I'd let my golden chances pass me by.
Soon you'll leave me, off you would go in the midst of day. Never, never to
Gorgeous as always, you two. Beautiful. You three, I should say. I'm not excluding you, Andrea.
Three.
That's okay. But they're lovely. Then they're in love.
Right. You can tell. So we went from like the Italian opera giants to Rodgers and Hammerstein. What made you choose those?
Yeah.
I love music theater. I love golden age music theater, especially. It's complementing to an operatic voice, and it's gorgeous. It's simple, but it says so much. It's the simplicity of it, and the melody is so gorgeous, and the fact that he knew that duet, and I'm like, let's do it. It's perfect. Was the reason. So yeah.
No, I guess it just worked out that way because she had her King and I knew I knew Sam and Janet Evening, and we both knew the Kerosene.
Right.
I mean, I forget who I was if I was mentioning to Andrea when we met earlier, or not, but to give a classically trained singer the opportunity to sing musical theater.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And I'm probably gonna get a little chastised for this, but classic musical theater, all the oldies but goodies. Oh, they're such a joy to sing. They're all written so well, and so as long as you don't do anything stupid,
you're fine.
They're so wonderful for the voice, and it's a nice change from having to worry about what language are we in and what does that mean while you're doing a cartwheel across the stage and fighting off the villain, whatever it is. You know what I mean? And
For sure.
I mean, it's all written in the language we know, so one less thing that you have to worry about. Mm-hmm. It's really great fun. I never really I just in my upbringing I bypassed musical theater. I mean, my folks appreciated it, but it was church music Thursdays and Sundays, and then opera during the week during opera season. So I've had to kind of had to turn around and back up to go and appreciate musical theater, but it's a joy. I would take every opportunity that I would get to sing it.
But I think you're right when you say that it really is that classic golden age music theater, because there's certainly some music theater that I think a lot of opera singers' voices would not lend itself very well to, especially like a lot of the contemporary theater. A lot, but, this golden age stuff, it just seems to be written for the voice, for the enjoyment of the beauty of the voice, to just be able to sing beautifully, beautiful melodies, beautiful lyrics, and nothing crazy taxing. So it really is, in a sense, it's like bel canto. It just gives the voice a real chance to just glide and be gorgeous in the moment. So you're right. I think for sure. Great. Quinn and Deanna, the two of you were planning on getting married this summer, but the COVID pandemic happened and changed all of that. So do you want to tell us a little bit about the wedding and what's next? Where do we go from here?
Well, it was originally supposed to be August 1st in Hawaii. I mean, I think Quinn came to me and said, do you want to get married in Toronto or do you want to get married in Hawaii? And I was like,
Chicago.
Or Chicago. I was like, none of the above. I choose Hawaii, 100%. Like, that was just a no-brainer. And so, everything was picked and dress came in and linens, and we're so excited. And we rented a few Airbnbs for our family and friends to stay. And then it's funny, when all this happened, though, at the beginning, I'm like, oh no, it's not going to affect us. We're fine. We're all the way in August. We're going to be fine. I'm like, I felt so bad for those April weddings and May weddings. And then boom. I'm like, this is a reality. I don't think we're going to get married this summer. And I know. And also for our friends and family who are coming, my side at least, who are coming for the first time to Hawaii. I want them to enjoy being there and not have to worry about masks and going to the beach and quarantining in the closed beaches. Something as beautiful as that. So we sadly postponed our wedding until next year, next summer. No choice there. We had to do what we have to do. Yeah,
for sure, no choice. But boy, like all the planning that goes into a wedding, and then it's not even about trying to find a way to make it work around it. It's just everything's canceled at that point. So,
and then I was saying,
I was gonna say, but now you have a whole extra year to add all sorts of extra things to the wedding, right? If you need any ideas, Deanna, you just call me. I've got 100 ready to go.
Like, I think the good thing is that like so much is done. Everything is sort of done. So we're going to have the year to really think of new things that we can add and to really make this wedding even better. And better. So.
And my wallet goes ching, ching,
It's all part of it though, right? Come on. This next question, I'm actually going to ask Andrea this. So as pianists, we're never just pianists. People hire us to be coaches. Sometimes we're conductors. Sometimes we have to play a xylophone in something, whatever. Like we always have to be ready for whatever people expect from us. And quite often we get hired to play at non-concert events, such as weddings. So I'm going to ask you, what's the weirdest thing that someone's ever asked you to play at a wedding?
Can't wait for this.
Oh gosh, like the weirdest repertoire or the weirdest?
Yeah, anything.
Weirdest repertoire. Oh, I mean, I've done quite a few weddings. I can't think off the top of my head.
Oh, well, maybe you just played at classier weddings than I have.
Or maybe I've just told them what I'm going to play as opposed to like, taking their requests. But I don't know if I've had anything too crazy.
Wow.
It's usually, I think it's usually been in the realm.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I had someone once ask me to do the Carmen Habanera, and I was like, do you understand what that aria is actually about? And do you know what the lyrics mean? They're like, but we love it. It's so beautiful. And it's like, okay, well, get the divorce papers ready because like, bad choice.
I will say one of the first weddings I played was for a friend of mine at school. And I chose all this like repertoire that I thought was so beautiful. And then the day of the wedding came and I was like, a lot of it's really sad. So I kind of like, I think I just chose the music because I loved it so much. But then I was like, I learned from that like, it's not just about it being beautiful. You have to like, go with the theme of the day. So
for sure.
I hope yeah.
And
but
quite
yeah,
often,
nothing, I can't think of it.
Well, as pianists, like we learn so much repertoire. As coaches, we're constantly sight reading. People are always bringing us something. So we build up a huge repertoire. And I remember once I was hired to do a church gig and they asked just for some solo stuff. And I brought a Rameau piece that I just thought it was so beautiful. And this is when I learned that you never know who's in the audience. Because after I played it, someone came up to me and said, do you actually know what that piece is about? And I was like, no, but it's so beautiful, right? And he's like, yeah, it's beautiful, but it's actually about women's panties. What? He's like, yeah, you just played a song about women's panties in church. Thank you very much. Well, this is why I don't go to church very often. Sorry, Mom. Anyway.
Well, it's not like there were lyrics, right? I mean, you were just playing a beautiful thing.
No, and I wasn't like twirling them on my finger or anything, so not yet. I don't know how to behave in church, so don't invite me to play at your church. I've got one more question that we have to do, and then we'll get to the last set of music. Quinn, you met ATG's founding member, Joel Ivany, years ago in Norway. I think you were doing your first Rigoletto, if I'm not mistaken. And since then, you've been gracing some of the world's biggest opera houses, the stages in the world. So I'm just going to ask if you can somehow quickly sum up any advice that you would give to young up-and-coming singers for what that journey was like for you.
Patience.
That sounds good.
I mean, I mean, there's so many other things that one could say, but you know, as a young singer, you're coming out of college, you're coming out of a young artist program, and you feel like you should be jumping on 10 different things at one time because you're worried about getting management, you're worried about auditioning for work, you have bills to pay. You know, you have lessons and coaching and travel to pay for, so you feel like, well, I'm slacking if I don't get management tomorrow and get on the ball and learn all this rep so that I can have somebody get me work for Bohem and Traviata and blah blah, you know, one after the other. But on top of all of that, I think one of the main things to keep in mind is to have patience, because you can burn yourself out. You can totally rush right past the point in your life that you're supposed to be at because you're thinking that you're doing everything right, and you've completely overshot your goal. For specialized voices, a lot of times music / opera professionals aren't always always sure how a voice will develop if they know that there's something in there just besides a lyric, tenor, or soprano, or they know it, and so they're hesitant to throw them into some kind of program or some kind of regimen for building their repertoire so they can get work. Or they do know exactly what kind of voice is in front of them, and even more so, they've got to fight the urge to throw them in and get them into a regimen so that they can get work, because it's about, this is something that I've learned recently, that was something that I've had reinforced for me recently in sitting in the living room while Deanna's teaching 3 or 4 days a week. That it's really about learning. Training to be an opera singer is so much about learning yourself, learning who you are.
Yeah.
Learning about all the ways that your body works and doesn't. And I mean, I figured out generally that it took me about 12 years from the minute I started college until I got to a point where I was comfortable that I was an actual working singer and not still a young singer / still in the middle of some kind of study. That by 30 years old, I was working. I still had to audition at times, but people were hiring me just to work. So, and it doesn't happen overnight. And
well, and I'm so sorry. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. Technical lag. But I'm so glad that you used the word patience, because for me, especially teaching at a university, at a conservatory, it's one of the hardest things to try and explain to young musicians. And I remember being that young musician as well. Of course, we want to be on stage. Of course, we want that dreamy career that we've thought about, for most of our lives. But it is that I think there is so much patience in not just honing in on your own skill, but honing in on yourself, finding out who you truly are so that you can actually present your true self when you are given that, that dream audition that you've been waiting for all this time. So I really hope all my young singers that I work with, I hope you've been listening to this and taking notes, because to me, it really is great advice. It sounds so easy and so simple, but I don't think that it's something that, as young artists, we implement. So thank you for that very much. We're gonna go. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, just one little thing I want to add, because if you have two Siamese twins who are both singers, they're still, and they sing all the same rep. They seem to be built, as carbon copies of one another. There's still no 100% guarantee that they will perform physically in exactly the same way.
Totally.
And so
absolutely.
So you have to take that time to know exactly how your body works, orally or physically, because if you sprain your ankle, if you break your leg or something like that, it'll affect your voice, because your voice, your voice is a breathing, pulsating part of your body. So it's just and this realization comes from years, from 20 plus years of really focusing on this. I mean, I started singing when I was 7 or 8, and I started singing opera when I was 13, but I wasn't really able to focus on it full on until probably halfway through college.
Right.
Well, we've just seen, Deanna and I have just seen so many ways that young singers and young ones want it all now.
We were like that too.
To an extent. But
I think it is a little different these days too, because these younger singers, they're coming up far more educated. They've got the internet and they've got everything available to them. Whereas I had to flip through a card catalog to find the recording that I needed, back in my student days. So it's true. I think there's a different sort of impulse to get it more quickly. But I go back to saying thank you for talking about that patience. I wish we could actually talk about this in greater detail, but we got to get back to those recordings. And I don't know, maybe we'll have to have a part 2 to this discussion. So let's get back to some more recordings, and I'll see you guys in a couple minutes. Thanks again. Great. So we're going to continue with our third set of music now, and we're actually going to do something from a musical review, Sheldon Harnick's New Faces of 1952. It ran for about a year on Broadway in 1952 and launched the careers of a number of performers, including Alice Ghostley, Eartha Kitt, and Mel Brooks, just to name a few. It's a series of comedic sketches and songs, and eventually a film version of it soon followed with much of the original cast. This particular song that we're going to hear is called The Boston Beguine. I already mentioned how much I love Chicago, but I have to say I kind of feel quite the opposite about Boston. We took a trip there not very long ago, and I found it a little bit stiff. It must be the presence of Harvard or something, but compared to Chicago, I think I remember even saying like Boston felt like it was almost like a sexless city that seemed to lack some real grit. It also lacked brunch spots, so I'm still a little bitter about that too. This piece, The Boston Beguine, from New Faces of 1952, it actually paints a very different picture of Boston, one that I find much more interesting to me. This is The Boston Beguine from Sheldon Harnick's New Faces of 1952.
Tropical nights, orchids in bloom, solitary perfume, intrigues and dangers, with passionate strangers. I've seen it all, as I recall. I met him in Boston, in the native quarter. He was from Harvard, just across the border. It was a magical night, with romance everywhere. There was something in the air, there always is in Boston. We went to the Casbah, that's an Irish bar there, the underground hideout of the DAR there. Something inside me said, watch your heart, mademoiselle, and it might be just as well to watch your purse in Boston. We danced in a trance, and I dreamed of romance, till the strings of my heart seemed to be parted, and even the palms seemed to be parted. The Boston begin was casting its spell, and I was drunk with love and cheap muscatel. We walked to the Common, that's a pretty park there. As I remember, it was pretty dark there, in this exotic locale by a silver lagoon. Underneath the voodoo moon, we fell asleep in Boston. That was the story of my one romance there. My dreams of adventures didn't stand a chance there. How could we hope to enjoy all the pleasures ahead, while the books we should have read were all suppressed in Boston, the exotic Boston, land of the free, home of the brave, home of the Red Sox, home of the Bean, and home of the Boston Begin.
Yeah, that's certainly not the Boston that I visited. So thank you for that, Deanna. American composer William Bolcom wrote a series of volumes of cabaret songs with the lyrics by Arnold Weinstein. And these are really popular songs among singers and pianists still today. These cabaret songs were originally written for his wife, the mezzo-soprano Joan Morris. The song Black Max tells the story of this elusive, mysterious man who wanders the streets of Amsterdam. And although no one ever sees him, they all know about him. Bolcom sets this song really beautifully in the cabaret style of Bertolt Brecht, Kurt Weill. This is Black Max by William Bolcom.
He was always dressed in black, long black jacket, broad black hat, sometimes a cape, and as thin as rubber tape, Black Max. He would raise that big black hat to the big shots of the town, who raised their hats right back, never knew they were bowing to Black Max. I'm talking about night in Rotterdam, where the right night people of all the town would find what they could in the night neighborhood of Black Max. There were women in the windows with bodies for sale, dressed in curls like little girls in little dollhouse jails. When the women walked the streets with the beds upon their backs, who was lifting up his brim to them? Black Max. And there were looks for sale, the art of the smile. Only certain people walk that mystery mile. Artists, charlatans, vaudevillians, men of mathematics, acrobatics, and civilians. There was knitting needle music from a lady organ grinder with all his sons behind her. Marco, Vito, Benno, was he strong, though he walked like a woman. And Carlo, who was 5, he must be still alive. Poor Marco had the sif, and if you didn't take the terrible cure those days, you went crazy and died, and he did. And at the coffin, before they closed the lid, who raised his lid? Black Max. I was climbing on the train, one day going far away to the good old USA, when I heard some music underneath the tracks. Standing there beneath the bridge, long black jacket, broad black hat, playing the harmonica, one hand free, to lift that hat to me. Black Max, Black Max, Black Max.
Great choice, Quinn. I think it's probably one of my favorite Volcom songs, so thank you so much for that. Rossini's Barber Seville is considered one of the greatest of comedic operas, probably the greatest comedic opera. And in this duet, Figaro is playing the matchmaker and trying to convince Rosina to write a little note to let Lindoro know her true feelings about him. She plays really coy and shy, but coincidentally, she's already written to Lindoro, and she must now wait patiently for her lover to arrive. This is the duet Dunque io son from Rossini's Barber of Seville.
Dunque io son, tu non mi inganni. Dunque io son, la fortunata. Già me l'ero immaginata, lo sapevo prima di te. Dunque io son, tu non mi inganni. Già me l'ero immaginata, lo sapevo prima di te. Già lo sapevo prima di te. Lo sapevo prima di te.
Bimbo in quanto siete voi, bella Rosina. Siete voi, bella Rosina. Oh, che volpe sopraffina. Oh, che volpe sopraffina. Va con me, sì, va con me. Va con me.
Senti, ma Lindoro per parlar come si fa?
Zitto, qui Lindoro per parlarvi, or sarà. Zitto, Tuzzito qui l'indoro per parlarmi un'ora sola.
Per parlarmi, bravo, bravo, vengo pur ma con prudenza. Io già moro di pazienza, ma che tarda, ma cosa fa?
Lei mi attende qualche segno, poverine, del vostro affetto. Sol 2 righe di biglietto, sol 2 righe di biglietto gli mandate, qui verrà, gli mandate, e qui verrà, gli mandate, qui verrà. Che ne dite?
Non ne vorrei,
Su, coraggio,
non saprei,
sol 2 righe.
mi vergogno.
Ma di che, si sa. Presto, presto, qual biglietto?
Un biglietto, eccolo qua.
Già, era scritto. Che bestia, che bestia, il maestro faccio a lei.
Fortunati avete miei, io comincio a respirar.
Ma che cattedra costei di malizia dettar.
Tu solo, amor, tu sei, e mi devi consolar, che mi devi consolar. Ma tu solo, amor, tu sei, e mi devi consolar. Ma tu solo, amor, tu sei, e mi devi consolar. Senti, senti, Valindoro,
Qui verrà, a momenti per parlarvi qui sarà.
venga pur ma con prudenza.
Zitto, zitto, qui verrà.
Fortunati avete miei, e comincio a respirar. Comincio a respirar.
Donne, donne,
Ma tu
del
solo, tu devi consolar.
Donne, donne, del
Yeah.
Wow.
I love the song.
Listen to that crowd. Wow.
It's amazing.
Incredible. We start with Rossini, we end with Rossini. Amazing, you guys. Thank you so much to the three of you for being a part of Opera. It was amazing to have you, Quinn. It was great to meet you. Deanna, we were reunited after 100 years since the last time we worked together. And Andrea, always great to see you, my fellow colleague and coach extraordinaire at U of T. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Great.
guys. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, anytime, anytime. I also need to thank the Yukon Arts Center for sponsoring Opera Pubs. A huge thank you to our viewers and for everyone that was participating tonight. Thank you so much for all your comments. We love them. Keep them coming. Our next Opera Pub is on June 30th, and it's coming to you live from Berlin with the amazing Rachel Fenlin. And if you can't wait until then for some more ATG, tune in next week, Thursday, July 23rd, when ATG's Joel Ivany will be chatting with Yellowknife singer-songwriter Leela Gilday live on Facebook and our YouTube channel. Thank you so much again to our artists and to everyone out there watching. See you in 2 weeks. Ciao.
Thanks,
Thank
folks.
you. Thanks, David. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.